first joined Sea Shepherd when I was 18 years old, and that was 17 years ago. And ever since I was 14 years old, no environmental issue was of greater importance to me than the issue of whaling. And that was a deeply felt sentiment that I had from 14 years old when I first saw a picture of a dead minke whale being pulled up the slipway of an 8,000-ton ship down in the Antarctic. And that feeling was then amplified when I actually went down to the Antarctic on Sea Shepherd ships and saw the killing for myself. But as I spent 10 years with Sea Shepherd chasing Japanese whaling ships around the frozen continent of the Antarctic, the remaining 7 seas were under siege. Shark populations were plummeting, fish populations were falling, and all 7 species of sea turtles continued to be pushed further towards the brink of extinction. As the Japanese whaling fleet ruthlessly pursued 1,035 whales annually, over 300,000 whales and dolphins were being killed every single year as bycatch in the industrial fishing sector. The marine scientist and University of York professor Calum Roberts, he describes whaling as the first global fishing industry. And if you look back 200 years ago, whalers from the Netherlands, from the Basque Country, from the Americas, systematically moved from ocean to ocean, driving whale species to the brink of extinction. They went all the way down up to the Arctic, and with the advent of diesel and steam technologies, with the invention of the explosive whaling harpoon gun, they went all the way down to the ends of the earth, down to the Southern Ocean. And so effective were they that in 1986, the international community got together and put in place a global moratorium on commercial whaling. Blue whales fell down to 0.5% of what their pre-whaling number was. These measures have been largely really effective, and we've seen that whale populations around the world are rebounding because of this international action. But the same cannot be said for populations of sharks, the same cannot be said for fish, the same cannot be said for sea turtles and other creatures in the sea. We've largely won the war to save the whales, but as a conservation movement, we've been losing almost everywhere else. Elizabeth Colbert, who is a staff writer for The New Yorker, she writes often about what she calls the sixth extinction, the sixth in a line of 5 massive species die-outs throughout ecological history, but the first that's been caused by us. Shark species that survived the KT asteroid that killed the dinosaurs may not actually survive us. If current trends continue, then by 2048, the world's major fisheries targeting predatory fish populations will collapse. And at the same time, the amount of plastic in the world's oceans will actually outweigh the amount of fish. Gone will be the bluefin tuna. Gone will be every species of sea turtle. Gone will be the vaquita porpoise, the world's most endangered cetacean, of which there's less than 20 left. 2048 is less than 30 years away, and yet Sea Shepherd's been around for more than 40 years. It means that we have less time to turn this tide of destruction than Sea Shepherd's been around to date. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization believe that 90% of the world's fisheries are either fully exploited or overexploited. And for me, numbers and statistics are really hard to set to memory, but the number 90 comes up time and time again. The number of large fish in the world's oceans has fallen by 90% in the past 100 years. 90% of the world's fisheries are either overexploited or fully exploited. And 20% of the world's fish that are caught through illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing methods. So we recognize here is this issue. We have to deal with overfishing to protect the health of our oceans. When 1 out of 5 of those operators are operating illegally, then surely these are operators we should be able to knock out because we already have the law on our side. 90% of the world's fish are also caught in the waters of a country. There actually is a government there that has the authority to board, inspect, and arrest ships. They actually have a jurisdiction to do something about the illegal fishing problem. So if we consider that 90% of the world's fisheries are overexploited or fully exploited, 90% of the world's fish are caught in the waters of countries, then to turn back this tide of destruction, we have to work with governments to bring these illegal operators to justice. After the thunder sank, I was invited to go to Gabon, where I met with the Minister of Defense and with the Minister of Fisheries, and we signed an agreement whereby we would provide a ship as a civilian offshore patrol vessel, we would provide a crew to run that vessel, and we would provide fuel for that ship, and Gabon would provide law enforcement agents from the National Parks Authority, from the Gabonese Navy, and from the Fisheries Department. Law enforcement agents with the authority to board, inspect, and arrest ships. And patrolling with Gabon now for the past 4 years, we've assisted Gabon to arrest 12 vessels for illegal fishing. Every single one of those vessels, every day that they're detained, we're saving thousands of sea creatures. Every day that they're stuck in port is an illegal slaughterhouse shut down. And just after we started working with Gabon, thanks to the work of Pristine Seas and the National Geographic Society, Gabon established the largest network of marine protected areas in Africa, covering 26% of their waters. And we're now working with the Gabonese government to establish Africa's first shark sanctuary. And it started with doing these joint at-sea patrols. With the success of the work in Gabon, we were invited to start working with other countries in West Africa. The next place we went was in Liberia. 2 years ago, we were on patrol off the coast of Liberia when we came across a ship called the Lobiko II, a vessel that was legally licensed to fish in the waters of Liberia for tuna using long line fishing gear. The Liberian Coast Guard, who were working on board the Sea Shepherd ship Sam Simon, boarded the Lobiko II, and what they found was just shocking to the core. They discovered that the Lobiko II was, under its previous name, Maine, was wanted by 3 international regional fisheries management organizations. This was a blacklisted vessel. They saw that the ship was not using long lines. They were using deep sea gill nets to target deep sea sharks. And they also discovered on board a secret shark liver oil production plant. From what we discovered looking back at the history of the vessel is that in the 1990s, this ship, the Lobiko II, was part of a fleet of 50 largely Spanish-owned vessels that were targeting deep sea sharks in the North Atlantic. In any single night, any single evening, they would be putting out between 6,000 to 9,000 kilometers of gill net, which is the distance between London, New York, and back. Any single night, that's the amount of net that was out in the oceans by these 50 ships. On every fishing expedition that would last between 4 to 8 weeks, each ship would lose 30 kilometers of gill net as ghost net that would continue to drift and kill until it would finally wash ashore somewhere. 30 kilometers of gill net times 50 ships is 1,500 kilometers of gill net. Every single, almost 1,000 miles of gill net lost at sea every 4 to 8 weeks by these 2 ships. And that's the equivalent of 750 tons of marine plastic pollution in the form of gill net by just this fleet of 50 ships. And as conservationists, we're of course encouraging people to say no to single-use straws and no to plastic bags and things like this. But here's 750 tons of marine plastic in the form of gill nets that are abandoned at sea by these boats. And it's factored into the economics of their fishing operations. So effective were these boats that in just 3 years of fishing, deep sea sharks in the North Atlantic fell to 20% of their pre-fishing number. So the European Union kicked these boats out. These boats then went to India, off the coast of India, where they wiped out deep sea sharks. They then went to the Mozambique Channel, where they wiped out deep sea sharks. And boarding the Lobiko II off the coast of Liberia, we discovered that the shark poachers had now come to West Africa, a place where historically there still has been fish and shark. From the cargo manifests seized on board this ship, we knew that every 3 weeks, 18 to 21 days, the Libico 2 was offloading 50 ton of shark liver oil in the port of Dakar in Senegal. And to produce 50 ton of shark liver oil takes the lives of 66,000 deep sea sharks, which means that just this one single ship alone was killing 500,000 sharks every single year. It's incredible because as conservationists, we know the statistic that 73 to 100 million sharks are killed every single year. Here is one single vessel that nobody knew about, operating illegally in the Shadowlands, killing 500,000 sharks. The vessel was arrested by the Liberian Coast Guard. It was detained in the port of Monrovia, and it's now been more than 2 years, and the vessel has not been out to sea to fish since, which means that one single action on one of these African IUU fishing patrols has saved the lives of over 1 million sharks to date. And again, that's the kind of success that you can only get with an organization like Sea Shepherd. We then expanded our operations to include the Gambia, Benin, Namibia, Tanzania. What we've been able to do in the past 4 years working with a number of countries around the African continent is assist the governments of those countries to arrest 54 vessels for illegal fishing and other fisheries crimes. We've established a model that really works. It can be so daunting, the idea of saving the oceans, but thankfully we don't have to save the entirety of the oceans. That's 3/4 of the planet. We have to identify these critical areas of biodiversity, these places where we can really dig in our positions, where we can take a stand and where we can push back poachers who have plundered those places for way too long. That's places like Liberia, places like Gabon, places like Tanzania, the places that we're working in. And what we're now doing is working to expand those national campaigns into regional patrols by signing agreements with neighboring countries to our existing partnerships. And the dream then is if we can have law enforcement agents on board from a number of different countries at the same time, well, then we can move seamlessly between borders and do something that navies can't actually do. We know what we're capable of because we helped shut down illegal fishing in the Antarctic. And if we could do that there, then we can certainly do it in the Gulf of Guinea. And if we can do it in the Gulf of Guinea, then we can do it in the West Africa region. If we can do that, we can do it around the continent of Africa. And if we can do that there, then we can do it in the South Pacific. We can do it in Southeast Asia. We can do it around Latin America. There's an NGO called Global Fishing Watch, and they map out concentrations of fishing activity around the world. And if you look at a map of their operations, what you see is fishing activity lighting up this map, almost like towns and villages or cities in a desert at night if you were flying over something like the outback in Australia. In the area and the places we've been working, Tanzania, Liberia, and Gabon, those lights are dimming. And local small-scale artisanal fishermen in these places are seeing fish coming back for the first time in half a century. Sea Shepherd is the only private navy out there doing the job that the world's navies should be doing, which is protecting the world's oceans. And Sea Shepherd appeals to people for a number of different reasons. And regardless of why you're passionate about Sea Shepherd, if it's for the environment, then we are the organization that ensures that marine protected areas are not just paper tigers. These MPAs get established, but then we come in with our ships and we ensure that they're actually protected, that they're not just marine protected areas on paper. If conservation is your passion, we are the ones on the front lines with local governments and national governments around the African continent, stopping these poachers from coming in the first place. If your passion is for animals, if animal rights or animal welfare if that's what really drives you, then these campaigns working in cooperation with these governments, we're saving more lives than we've ever saved in our over 40 years of campaigns. Again, I remind you that when we were able to assist the Liberian Coast Guard to arrest the Libico 2, we were able to save over 1 million sharks. If your passion is social justice, if that's what drives you, and I see that there's an intersectionality between all of these things, then we are assisting small-scale, local, artisanal fishermen whose nets every single night are being run over. Their canoes and pirogues are being run over by industrial fishing operators who prioritize profit over lives.
Despite the logistical complications of COVID-19, Sea Shepherd is back in Benin, working together with the State Action on the Sea under the direction of the Maritime Commissioner in Benin to stop illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Benin is home to a UNESCO World Heritage Marine Reserve called the Bouche du Roy, an area that has several IUCN red-listed endangered species, a place that provides a livelihood for thousands of local Beninese who depend on the artisanal fishing for their survival. Because of that, there's a special management area extending 5 miles out to sea where no industrial fishing is allowed. Thanks to the actions of the crew of the Bob Barker, supported by the State Action on the Sea, a trawler called the Fada 18 was documented fishing inside a 5 nautical mile inshore exclusion zone reserved for artisanal fishing. On return to port, the Fada 18 was detained in the port of Cotonou, sending a strong message from the Maritime Commissioner that the Bouche du Roy Marine Reserve is protected not just in name, but in practice. The arrest of the Fada 18 is the 6th arrest in Benin since the cooperation started between Sea Shepherd and the country of Benin. It's the 55th arrest that Sea Shepherd has assisted 7 African partner states around the continent of Africa since we started working together to stop illegal fishing. These are direct results for marine wildlife saved because every single day that one of these trawlers is detained in port is marine wildlife saved and marine protected areas protected not just as paper tigers. Outside of its ecological significance, the Bouche du Roy Marine Reserve is of critical cultural importance to the people of the Grand Popo region, which borders Benin and Togo. Under the Voodoo religion, areas where forests meet the sea are particularly sacred. With COVID-19, global fishing efforts have decreased by about 10%, but there's a danger in an increase in poaching. This because of the economic impact felt by the pandemic, but also because there are less controls at sea. Sea Shepherd's working together with the State Action on the Sea, is an extension of the sovereignty of Benin to completely be able to control and protect the entirety of their waters, but also in protecting the livelihood of local people in Grand Popo, action that is linked to conserving the marine reserve. Poachers don't stop in a pandemic, neither does the work of Sea Shepherd.